So the original plan was to put the new Curado 150M up against the old 150 MGL. Now I wasn't able to get that done because of bad weather the last few weekends, but then I realized that a comparison of both of those reels would be kind of moot because the 150 MGL is discontinued and no longer for sale. The more important comparison would be the 150M up against the 200M, which came out last year. I think this is going to be a far more important comparison, especially when people are looking at both of these reels and trying to figure out which one is going to best fit their needs. And hopefully this video will help anyone out who has that question. So let's get started. So before we begin this comparison, I just want to give huge thanks to the guys over at Lake Pro Tackle because they're the ones who sent me out the mighty new Curado 150M. So leave a comment thanking the guys over at Lake Pro Tackle for supporting this channel. And also leave a comment and let me know what other reels out there you want to see me review. I've already seen a couple of guys mentioning one of the new LEWS with the new braking system. But yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link pinned at the top of the comments where you can get your new Curado 150M or your new Curado 200M straight from Lake Pro Tackle. Now the difference between the 150M versus the 200M is going to boil down to 4 categories. The first category is size, the second category is weight, the third category is the spool, and the fourth category is going to be the braking system. And I'm going to go over each category and point out the differences. Now, category 1, the size. Now, if you're the kind of person that prefers smaller, more compact, lower profile reels, then the 150 is going to be the one that you would want. Because as you can see by this side-by-side comparison, the 200, which is on the right side, is noticeably bigger than the 150. And let me switch sides here. We can definitely tell when I switch sides that the 200 is the bigger reel, and not only is it bigger, it's much taller as well. It's quite a difference in reel height. Now it's not to say that the 200 is not a comfortable palming reel. You actually might prefer it if you have bigger hands, but yeah, the 150 is a smaller, lower profile, more compact reel, and that brings us to the second difference, and that's going to be the weight. So it comes as no surprise that since the 200M is the bigger reel, it's also going to be the heavier reel. But let me show you just how much heavier it is. So here's the 200M coming in at 7.58 ounces. It's pretty much 7.6 ounces. Now let's weigh the 150. 6.74 ounces. So you're looking at about a 1 ounce difference between the two. Now you might be thinking, 1 ounce is not a big deal. And I'm going to say it's really going to depend on what you're fishing. If you're fishing moving baits where you have to snap the rod tip all day long, then 1 ounce is absolutely going to make a difference. Now the fourth thing that's different between these two reels are going to be their spools. Now both reels are designated as MGL3 spools, but they are not the same. Now here's the spool of the 200, here's the spool of the 150. Now the spool of the 200 is much bigger, coming in at 35 millimeters, and that's slightly bigger than I guess the current industry average of about 33 to 34 millimeters. Now with the 150, as you can see, the spool is much smaller, coming in at only 32 millimeters. And this is why we have the big line capacity difference between the two. As you can see, the 200 spool is much deeper, but of course they're running the typical Shimano long spool shaft. Both have silent tune O-rings, but strangely enough, despite how much bigger the 200 spool is, it's actually very lightweight for its size, and it's not that much heavier than the 150 spool. The 200 spool is coming in at 14.2 grams, while the 150 spool is coming in at 13.4 grams. So less than a gram difference between them. So overall, the 150 spool is smaller and lighter, while the 200 is going to be bigger and heavier. So keep that in mind when making your purchase. But here's one thing that you also might want to consider. As you can see, both reels are running Shimano's SBS Infinity, but on the 150, Shimano wisely put 6 brake arms versus 4 for the 200. And I'll get into why that's important in the next section. But generally, spools that are lighter and smaller will cast lighter lures easier. So once again, keep that in mind. Alright, so now we're going to wrap this video up by talking about performance and also where I would feel one reel would be better than the other. Now, casting wise, both reels are monsters, but I've never casted them side by side to compare, so I'm just going to be going by memory. And this is how I would break it down. So anything under 1/2 of an ounce, I'll probably give it to the 150, especially if you're going down to like a 1/4 ounce or even lower. The smaller and lighter spool of the 150M should cast those lures better. Not saying that the 200M can't cast those lures, but I think the 150M is going to be the better reel for that. Now, anything over 1/2 an ounce, especially where you need line capacity, I'm thinking that the 200M will easily outcast the 150. That's simply due to its much bigger spool that doesn't have to spin as much to cast farther distances versus the 150. And of course, when you're trying to long bomb things like a frog, the extra line capacity of the 200 is definitely going to be a plus if you're running heavier, thicker line. Now, when it comes to skipping, I'm going to give that to the 150M because it has the 6 brake arms versus only 4 for the 200. Now when I say skipping, I mean someone who is, I guess, a novice skipper or someone who isn't as consistent at skipping. With the 150, just turn on all 6 arms, crank the external dial up, and even bad skips won't be a disaster with the 150M versus the 200 because it has less maximum braking. Now, if you are, I guess, into what they call power techniques, like having to punch and pull fish out of cover, or techniques like smaller swim baits, Alabama rigs, big spinner baits that require power, then it's going to be the 200 all the way. I mean, this thing is a tank. Feels just as solid as the Bantam, and just check out the difference in the handle between the two. You can see that the 150's handle is much thinner. I wouldn't call it finesse oriented, but just look how beefy and thick the handle is on the 200. And look at the shape. This is a handle that's made for cranking and winching. It feels like it could crank in a tugboat. So yeah, there we go guys. The major differences between the two Curado M's, the 150 versus the 200. Now I'm not going to tell you which one to buy. You're going to have to base that on the information I gave you versus how you fish. But for me, since I rarely fish anything over 1/2 an ounce or over 5/8 of an ounce, and I prefer smaller, lighter reels, it's going to be the 150 all day. With that being said, if you need more line capacity, you need more power, or if you just prefer bigger, heavier reels to balance on long rods, then the 200 might be for you. Alright guys, thanks a lot.